Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to show you Cycnodes Wine Delight. I think the cultivar's name is JEM, J-E-M, but I don't really talk about hybrids that much, but I love this one so much, so I decided to give it its own special episode. Cycnodes is one of the hybrids from the Catasidae alliance, and in that group there are some famous genus such as Catasidum and Cycnodes, as well as some slightly less famous but still pretty well known genera such as Cloacia and, to a lesser extent, Mormodes. And Cycnodes in front of me is a hybrid between Cycnodes and Mormodes. As you see the name, the play on their names, this is Cycnodes, being a combination of Cycnodes and Mormodes, and this is specifically a hybrid, the primary hybrid between Cycnodes leishmanii and Mormodes sinuata. And this is a really interesting group of plants in the sense that they are deciduous, they shed their leaves in the winter. Some of them flower when their leaves are here in the summer or fall. Some of them flower on leafless bulbs in the winter. And I think Cycnodes leishmanii is the one that flowers with the leaves on the bulb, and the other parent of this one, Mormodes sinuata, is the one that flowers on leafless pseudobulbs in the winter. But this one in front of me is flowering right now in late summer / early fall. It's August and of course northern hemisphere, but yeah, I also read it can flower multiple times a year and sometimes even when the leaves have dropped. So I'm still yet to see that. I only got this plant back in April or something, but it has been growing really well. And back to that Catasidae group before I dive into this plant. So Catasidum, that genus out of the Catasidae, is probably one of the easiest genus to care for of that group. They flower multiple times a year, they get pretty big and they grow pretty fast, and the pseudobulbs are pretty persistent in the sense that they don't rot as easily as Cycnodes, so that you can see on an aged plant there are many pseudobulbs in a clump, forming a clump, similar with Cloacia. I think Cloacia is really rot resistant genus of Catasidae. They have smaller stature. Well, the popular ones such as Grace Dunn and Rebecca Northern has really small stature, and they're much smaller than Catasidum. They take up less space and they have smaller flowers as well. And once they have been in a pot for a few years, you can see many pseudobulbs. I have a Rebecca Northern growing over there, and just from each pseudobulb they are producing 1 or 2 pseudobulbs this year already. That's pretty impressive. And of course, in the Cloacia, I love Cloacia genus so much, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. There's also another group such as Cloacia rosseliana that flowers in the summer when the leaves are on it. I also got one of those as a seedling. Hopefully it will flower in a couple of years, but nothing to show just yet. And the other two genera, Cycnodes and Mormodes, they tend to be a little bit more finicky in cultivation. Their pseudobulbs rot a little bit more easily, and they don't hold on to their pseudobulbs for that many years, so they don't form a huge clump. Usually you see 1 or 2 pseudobulbs on each plant versus like dozens dozens might be a little bit exaggerating, but certainly in the wild, like several pseudobulbs on a Catasidum. So yeah, that's in general that this group is just an amazing plant that grows really fast in the summer and go dormant in the winter and drop their leaves because they are adapted to this distinct wet-dry cycle in nature. Okay, so enough about those species. Back to the star in sight. This, as you can see, the plant is, if you use my hand for comparison, a good size. It doesn't take that much space, but it's not dwarf or miniature to any means. And sometimes I see the leaves being less droopy than this, but I guess this is still norm. And if you go look at the flowers, this is pretty clear. Well, hopefully this is obvious. And this is the reason why they call it wine delight, because of this veiny color, or this wine colored, really strong burgundy colored buds, flowers on it. And the flower is kind of, if you know the parents to a degree, it resembles the shape, it resembles the Cycnodes, and the color it takes more from the Mormodes parent, and that's just in general the rule of thumb if you cross those two genera together. So Cycnodes is known as a swan orchid, because sometimes if you look from the side, the column together with the lip is kind of like a swan on the plane of water that's formed by the lateral sepals and petals. But Mormodes is more contorted with more like a saddle shaped, and so in general the flower shape and shape and size takes from the Cycnodes parent, as you can see in this one. It's not as flat as the typical Cycnodes, but it's much flatter than Mormodes. And the flowers have opened up a little bit more since a few days ago, but I guess in my experience, at least, this group of plants, or at least this specific individual, takes a while for the flower to fully open. And it's been opening, sometimes you grow Cattleya and the flower open in a couple of days and then start to develop their scent, and maybe some of them will age into different color. But these has been, on the cusp of opening. I see the first open maybe like 4 or 5 days ago, and now it's still kind of consistently opening up bigger and bigger every day. I think this is the oldest flower. It probably won't get flatter than this, but the one down there might even open up a little bit more. So other than this gorgeous color on the lip and the petals, the other really outstanding characteristic of this cultivar of this hybrid is the scent. I don't know if it's called wine delight because of color or because of scent, but it's magnificent. Some people say it smells like cherry cough syrup. Some people say specifically it smells like artificial cherry flavored, those Twizzlers candy that you can pull apart. And sometimes people think it smells a bit more chemical. To me, it smells, I don't really know what cherry smells like, because I don't really think cherry has a smell that's strong, but it does smell a little bit fruity, but also sometimes a little bit more chemically, but definitely more refreshing instead of the super sweet fragrance that people usually associate with flowers. It's nothing like typical flora you think of, or if you think of some of the like Cattleya, the unifolia Cattleyas, it's really different. Which is also great because it adds diversity, and the flower and the plant, they all look gorgeous. Okay, so enough about the flowers, onto the plant itself. In terms of culture, it's pretty straightforward in terms of water, light, temperature. Well, from the water perspective, it has a distinct wet-dry cycle, so make sure you water it plenty in the summer. And actually, there are really thirsty feeders in the summer, and most people, I believe, pot them either in pure moss, sphagnum moss, or sometimes people use this PET method where a little water reservoir at the bottom of the pot, so that it makes sure it has access to water all the time. And actually, when this one was spiking and forming its spike, I went for a short trip, and the terminal flower of this spike actually just aborted and dropped, because I guess it was a little bit on the drier side when I was away. But fortunately, all the flowers are still here and they're doing well. Gradually when the day shortens and fall comes, make sure, and especially when the leaves start to turn yellow a little bit, make sure you kind of taper off the watering and to a full stop. If you have the luxury of living somewhere with a humid winter, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Just stop the watering completely. But if you have pretty dry air in the winter, like where I am, indoor heating and stuff, sometimes I do see the pseudobulb shrivel a little bit, and in those cases, I tend to just splash some water onto it, or just run the water very quickly through the moss, because at that point the medium is really dry. It doesn't soak in all the water that quickly, so just run through it, and hopefully you will see the pseudobulb plump back very quickly in a couple of days. So that's usually fine. And also seeing people, I think Fred Clark, who's, if you don't know him, Google him, he's great, mentioning that in some really dry parts of the northern hemisphere, like in Canada, they put it on top of a mason jar or a cup of water, so that there is some moisture or humidity coming into the roots, so that it doesn't fully desiccate. But yeah, if you see the plant being super stressed out, just don't ignore its call for help. Give it some of it water. It will thank you. But overall, pretty distinct dry rest, and start watering again when the new growth is pretty big and the leaves are expanding, and the rule of thumb is the roots is 4 to 6, I think, inches. But if you don't growing a clear pot, you can't really see the roots. So maybe when the root is poking through the hole at the bottom, or where you can see the leaves are starting to expand, that's a good time to water. If you water too early, the root will not stop growing in my experience completely, but it will certainly not have as long and healthy root system as it could have. So just hold on to the watering, don't be impatient, although it's very tempting, trust me, it's very tempting. Okay, so other things are pretty straightforward. They like highlight. I put mine together with all my trees, so almost full sun, well, at least half day of full sun, which I guess it makes it part sun. Anyways, it likes the light. Sometimes you see in the wild it grow on telephone poles or just cracks of concrete, so they're pretty tough. Like light, like it warm. I keep my apartment pretty warm, and in general they come from Central America, that region. The temperature doesn't fluctuate that much year over year, within the year, so they like it warm as well. And one thing I do want to mention, other than the typical cultural requirement, is pests. So I have grown some Catasetum before. I stopped growing them because they're in my experience a huge magnet for spider mites. I have a huge problem. Well, sometimes I have big problems with spider mites at home, and that's just one pest I can never get rid of. And in my experience, Catasetums are really susceptible to spider mites, and their leaves also sometimes get those nectar because they're happy, and so they're sticky and they're big, and they get spider mites, and you want to rinse them off with water or a spray, but they get really big and sticky, so I just stopped growing Catasetum. And this one, it also had some spider mite damage. I don't know if you can see from the lighting. The top leaf is also a little bit yellow, but I think that's just from partially my damage, partially some nutrient problems. But the bottom one, you can see hopefully here that it has those yellow specks on it, which is pretty typical of my damage. Since then, I've wiped it with neem oil. I also sprayed a little bit. I also had some, green lacewings, which is mostly for aphids, but their small larvae also eat spider mites, so the problem hasn't been so terrible recently, but also it could just be the increased humidity in the summer. Who knows? But yeah, just make sure when you grow those, they are not just being fall to the evil hands of spider mites. All right, I think that's it. One last look at this gorgeous flower spike. It is pretty big compared to the size of the pseudobulb, and I know that it also has one eye there and one eye there, and hopefully they will grow out sometime in the future. I don't know, but I'm certainly enjoying this spike as it happens. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.